Einstein. Hey, Einstein, where's the dock, boy? Huh?
You already know the DeLorean. You already know 1.21 gigawatts. You already know that if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. But what you probably don't know is what happened before the cameras ever rolled. The near disasters, the last-minute replacements, the studio rejections, and the hidden details that were sitting right there on screen the whole time, waiting for someone to find them. Back to the Future is one of those rare movies that feels like it was always going to exist exactly the way it does. Like the story was just waiting to be told, and somebody found it perfectly formed. But that version of events couldn't be further from the truth. This movie came within inches of never getting made. The lead actor was replaced after weeks of filming. The studio said no 44 times. And the scene that launched the entire franchise almost didn't make the final cut. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale built something that has outlasted almost everything from its era. The film that Universal Pictures nearly walked away from completely has now been running for over 40 years. Sequels, a musical, theme park rides, and a cultural footprint that shows no signs of fading. Today we're going back to 1985 for 15 untold secrets and hidden facts about Back to the Future. The casting disasters, the deleted details, and the things you missed even after watching it 20 times. Now, before we jump in, hit like and subscribe to Before TV and Cinema for more deep dives into the movies and TV shows that shaped us. And share this video with someone who still checks their car's speedometer to see if it reads 88 miles per hour. Now, let's hit 88 miles per hour with number 1. Number 1. Universal Pictures rejected the script 44 times. Get this, before Back to the Future became one of the highest-grossing films of 1985, before it launched 2 sequels and a franchise that never really ended, it was a script that nobody in Hollywood wanted to touch. Not once, not twice. 44 times, Universal Pictures passed on Back to the Future. Let that number sit for a moment. 44 rejections from the same studio that eventually made the film and watched it earn nearly $400 million worldwide. Writers Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale spent years taking the script from one studio to the next and hearing the same answer every single time. Too soft. Not enough edge. Where's the conflict? Disney passed on it because the mother kissing her son subplot felt inappropriate for a family studio. Other studios didn't know what genre box to put it in. Was it science fiction? A comedy? A coming-of-age story? The script didn't fit neatly into any single category, and that made the suits nervous. It was only when Steven Spielberg came on board as executive producer that the project finally found a home, back at Universal, the same studio that had spent years telling Zemeckis and Gale the idea wasn't worth pursuing. With Spielberg's name attached, suddenly everyone saw the potential that had been sitting right there the whole time. The film's eventual gross wasn't just impressive, it was a direct rebuke to every executive who read that script and thought it didn't have legs. Back to the Future stayed at number 1 at the American box office for 11 consecutive weeks. 44 rejections, 11 weeks at number 1. Sometimes the people who say no are simply wrong. Number 2. Eric Stoltz was the original Marty McFly, and filmed for 6 weeks. Now here's the piece of Back to the Future history that stops fans cold every single time. The Marty McFly you know, the skateboard, the red puffer vest.
Where the hell are they?
The appropriate question is...
The screaming at the top of his lungs when the DeLorean actually hits 88. Was not the first Marty McFly, not even close. Eric Stoltz played the role for 6 full weeks of principal photography before the filmmakers made the decision to replace him. Eric Stoltz was cast after a strong audition and came to the project with serious dramatic credentials. He was a committed, technically gifted actor who gave the role everything he had. But Zemeckis and Gale started to realize, weeks into filming, that something wasn't connecting. Stoltz played Marty as a dramatic character. He treated every scene with emotional weight and earnestness, and that approach, while admirable, was fundamentally wrong for what Back to the Future needed. Marty McFly had to be funny. The film's entire engine ran on physical comedy, reaction shots, and the kind of looseness that comes from a performer who can find the joke inside a crisis. Stoltz, through no fault of his own, was playing a different movie. Michael J. Fox had been the original first choice before Stoltz was cast. The problem was that Fox was contractually locked into the television series Family Ties. When the schedule was renegotiated and Fox was made available, the filmmakers didn't hesitate. They restarted production with a new lead, working around Fox's TV filming schedule, sometimes shooting Back to the Future scenes in the middle of the night after Fox had already completed a full day on the Family Ties set. 6 weeks of footage was scrapped, almost entirely. The production cost was enormous, and the result was exactly right. Number 3. Michael J. Fox slept only a few hours a night during production. Now, if you ever wondered how a single human being filmed a hit television series and a blockbuster movie at the same time, the answer is that he mostly didn't sleep. Michael J. Fox's schedule during the production of Back to the Future was, by any reasonable measure, almost impossible. Fox would report to the Family Ties set early in the morning and film his television scenes through the afternoon and into the evening. Then when the TV cameras stopped rolling, he would drive across town to the Back to the Future set and film through the night, sometimes until 2, 3, or 4 in the morning, before turning around and doing it all over again. The production team designed his shooting schedule around the hours Family Ties didn't need him. This meant the most physically demanding scenes. The clock tower sequence, the skateboard chase, the lightning storm at the end, were shot during hours when most people are asleep. Fox has spoken about this period with a combination of exhaustion and pride. He was in his early 20s, fueled by ambition and the understanding that this was not an opportunity that came along twice. The performance you see on screen, the energy, the physical comedy, the sense that Marty is always one step away from completely losing it, was delivered by someone running almost entirely on adrenaline and very little rest. It's one of the most remarkable physical performances in 1980s cinema, and most of it was filmed between midnight and dawn. Number 4. The DeLorean was almost a refrigerator. Now, here's a detail from the very earliest drafts of Back to the Future that makes the finished film impossible to imagine. In Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale's original concept, Doc Brown's time machine was not a car. It was a refrigerator. A stationary, ordinary-looking refrigerator that you stepped into and emerged from somewhere in time. The concept was eventually abandoned for 2 reasons. The first was purely practical. Zemeckis worried that children watching the film might climb into their own refrigerators at home, trying to replicate what they saw on screen, and that was a risk the production wasn't willing to take. The second reason was creative. A refrigerator doesn't move. It sits in a room and you go to it. But a car goes somewhere. A car gives you speed, momentum, stakes. You need to hit 88 miles per hour. You need to be on a road, or a parking lot, or a runway. The DeLorean made the climax of every time travel sequence a chase. The refrigerator would have made it a door you opened. The choice to make the time machine a DeLorean wasn't made immediately either. The production considered various vehicles before landing on the DMC DeLorean, whose gull-wing doors, stainless steel body, and general sense of otherworldly strangeness made it look like a vehicle from the future even when parked on an ordinary street. It became one of the most iconic movie cars in history, and it started as a kitchen appliance. Number 5. Crispin Glover almost wasn't George McFly either. Now, the casting complications of Back to the Future didn't begin and end with Marty McFly. The role of George McFly, Marty's awkward, dreamy, conflict-avoiding father, went through its own complicated journey before Crispin Glover stepped in and made the character completely his own.
Well, what if they didn't like them? What if they told me I was no good?
Crispin Glover brought a strange, specific energy to George McFly that nobody could have predicted from the script alone.
Hi. It's really a pleasure to meet you.
His performance found something genuinely odd and genuinely human in equal measure, the kind of acting that makes a supporting character linger in the memory long after the film ends. But Glover did not return for the sequels. His absence from Back to the Future, Part 2 and Part 3 became one of the most discussed casting situations in Hollywood throughout the late 1980s. The circumstances involved salary negotiations that broke down and creative disagreements that could not be resolved. The production ultimately hired actor Jeffrey Weissman, applied extensive prosthetic makeup to resemble Glover, and filmed the character with his face mostly obscured or turned away from the camera. The Screen Actors Guild subsequently updated its rules in response to the situation. What became known informally as the Crispin Glover rule, preventing productions from using makeup or prosthetics to recreate the likeness of a performer without their consent. One casting decision changed industry-wide policy. That is the kind of ripple effect that most actors never create in an entire career. Number 6. The Johnny B. Goode scene created a historical paradox, on purpose. Now, if you've seen Back to the Future more than twice, you've probably wondered about the moment when Marty McFly picks up a guitar at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance and plays Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Goode. For a gymnasium full of stunned 1955 teenagers. And then Marvin Berry, Chuck Berry's fictional cousin, calls Chuck on the telephone so he can hear the new sound he's been looking for. The The film is suggesting, with a completely straight face, that Chuck Berry got the idea for one of the most influential rock and roll songs ever recorded by hearing a white kid from 1985 play it for the first time in 1955. Zemeckis and Gale knew exactly what they were doing. The paradox is intentional. Who wrote Johnny B. Goode? Chuck Berry learned it from Marty, but Marty knew it because Chuck Berry wrote it. The loop has no beginning and no end, and the film never winks at you about it. It just plays the joke completely straight and lets the audience catch up. Michael J. Fox did his own guitar playing for the sequence, though the actual audio performance was provided by guitarist Tim May, who played the song with a ferocity that matched the energy of the scene. Fox had enough guitar training to make the physical performance convincing, and the editing did the rest. The sequence also famously runs longer than it probably should. Marty starts playing Johnny B. Goode, and the crowd goes wild, and then he keeps going, into heavy metal territory, into a guitar solo that leaves the 1955 audience completely bewildered. It's one of the film's biggest laughs, and it was essentially improvised on the day. Number 7. The Twin Pines Mall becomes Lone Pine Mall, and almost nobody noticed. Now here's the kind of hidden detail that Back to the Future fans spend years finding and then can't stop thinking about. It's sitting in plain sight, right there in the film, and it rewards every single person who catches it. Early in the film, when Marty witnesses Doc Brown's first-time travel demonstration in the parking lot, a sign behind them reads Twin Pines Mall. After Marty travels back to 1955 and arrives in the middle of Old Man Peabody's farm, crashing through his barn, destroying his property, and driving over one of his pine trees on the way out, he returns to 1985 to find the same parking lot with a different sign. It now reads Lone Pine Mall. One pine tree. One Marty McFly. One changed timeline. The mall's name updated itself because Marty altered the past on the day he arrived in 1955. It's a detail that requires no explanation from any character, no dialogue, no pause for the audience to catch up. It's just there, visible for a fraction of a second if you're watching closely. Zemeckis has said in interviews that this was a deliberate Easter egg planted specifically for attentive viewers. It was not a mistake, not a continuity error, not something that slipped through. It was designed to reward the people paying the most attention. Most audiences missed it entirely on first viewing. Many caught it on VHS rewind. Some didn't find it until decades later. And every single time someone discovers it for the first time, the reaction is the same. A quiet, delighted recognition that the filmmakers were always one step ahead. Number 8. Ronald Reagan gets name-dropped. And the real Reagan reportedly loved it. Now, Back to the Future contains one of the most gently funny jokes about American politics that any studio film has ever managed to slip past the censors and directly into mainstream audiences. And the story of what happened when the joke reached its subject is almost as good as the joke itself. When Marty McFly arrives in 1955 and finds Doc Brown, he tries to explain the future. He tells Doc that the President of the United States in 1985 is Ronald Reagan.
Who's President of the United States in 1985?
Doc Brown's reaction is complete, absolute disbelief.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan? The actor?
The actor, the man from the movies, he dismisses it immediately as impossible. And then, in a callback later in the film, Doc, still processing, sarcastically asks if the vice president is Jerry Lewis. The joke was gentle enough to avoid genuine controversy, but specific enough to land hard with adult audiences who found the suggestion of a Hollywood actor becoming president genuinely absurd, which many had when Reagan was first elected. Word eventually reached the Reagan White House, and the reaction from the president himself was reportedly one of genuine delight. Reagan was said to have enjoyed the joke thoroughly. He even reportedly referenced the film in a State of the Union address the following year, quoting Doc Brown's line about the future. A film that made a sitting president the punchline of a joke got quoted by that same president in one of the most formal settings in American political life. That is a level of cultural penetration that most films never come close to achieving. Alright, we're going to pause for just a second because I want to hear from you in the comments. When did you first see Back to the Future? Was it in the theater in 1985, a VHS rental, or did you discover it years later on cable? And which version? The first film? The sequels? The animated series? Let us know down below. And while you're there, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive here at Before TV and Cinema. Number 9. The film's ending was almost completely different. Now, here's a piece of Back to the Future history that changes how the entire franchise looks in retrospect. The ending of the film, Doc Brown arriving in the DeLorean in a hazmat suit, dragging Marty and Jennifer into the car to deal with a problem in the future, launching the entire premise of the sequel, was not written as a sequel setup. It was written as a joke.
Both you and Jennifer turn out fine. It's your kids, Marty.
In the original ending, Marty returns to 1985, reunites with his family, watches the DeLorean disappear, and the film ends. Done. Complete. No sequel hook. Just a satisfying resolution. The Doc Arrives from the future ending was added because Zemeckis and Gale thought it would be funny to end on the promise of a sequel they had absolutely no plans to make. It was meant to be a gag, a wink at the audience, a playful just kidding note to close on.
Something has got to be done about your kids.
They were not planning Back to the Future Part 2. They were not even certain there would be a Part 2. Then the film made $210 million at the domestic box office and everything changed. The gag became a commitment. The joke became a production schedule. And Zemeckis and Gale suddenly found themselves having to actually write the future they had promised to show audiences. The fictional problem that brought Doc Brown rushing back in a hazmat suit, your kids, Marty, became the entire story engine of the second film. A throwaway ending created a mythology, and that mythology is still running. Number 10, Huey Lewis turned down the theme song, then showed up in the film. Now, the music of Back to the Future is so thoroughly baked into the film's identity that it's almost impossible to imagine the movie without it. The Power of Love, the opening keyboard riff. The sense that something exciting is about to happen and it's moving at 88 miles per hour. But the story of how that music came to exist involves a rejection, a reversal, and one of the more charming cameos in 1980s cinema. Huey Lewis and the News were approached early in production to write the theme song for Back to the Future. Lewis initially declined. He wasn't interested in writing for films at that point and passed on the opportunity without much deliberation. Then Lewis heard a track called Back in Time, a song written specifically for the film by another composer, and changed his mind. He agreed to come back and write an original song for the project. The result was The Power of Love, which became one of the defining pop songs of 1985 and reached #1 on the American charts. But here's the detail that rewards a close watch. In the scene where Marty's band auditions for the Enchantment Under the Sea dance and gets rejected by the judges, told they're simply too loud, the judge delivering that verdict is Huey Lewis himself. The man who wrote the film's theme song appears on screen to tell the film's protagonist that his music isn't good enough. It is a cameo so perfectly placed that it functions as a private joke for anyone who knows the context. And for anyone who doesn't, it's just a funny moment with a judge who has unexpectedly strong opinions about volume. Number 11. The clock tower scene was filmed in reverse order across weeks. Now, one of the most technically complex sequences in Back to the Future, the climactic clock tower scene where Marty needs the lightning strike to hit at the exact right moment and Doc Brown strings a cable across Hill Valley's most famous landmark.
You get the cable! I'll throw the room down too!
Right, I got it!
Was not filmed the way it appears on screen. Not even close. The sequence was shot out of order across multiple weeks of production, assembled in the editing room from pieces that were filmed in completely different conditions and sometimes on completely different nights. The rain, the lightning effects, the practical stunts involving the cable and the clock face, the DeLorean's approach. The moment the connection finally completes, all of it was captured in fragments and constructed into the seamless, breathless 10-minute sequence that closes the film. Director of photography Dean Cundy used careful lighting continuity to ensure that the assembled pieces matched. The technical coordination required to make rain, practical lightning effects, mechanical stunts, and actor performance all feel like one continuous night of action was enormous. Christopher Lloyd's performance in the sequence, hanging off the clock tower, wrestling with the cable, the desperation and the triumph, and the final salute before Marty disappears into the past, was filmed in very specific pieces over many sessions. What feels like a single extended moment of pure cinema was constructed carefully, shot by shot. The sequence remains one of the great action set pieces of its decade, and it was built like a puzzle, not filmed like a scene. Number 12. Bob Gale based the story on his own father's high school yearbook. Now, here's the personal origin story behind Back to the Future. The detail that explains where the emotional core of the film actually came from. Because before it was a time travel movie, before it was a franchise, before it was a theme park attraction, Back to the Future was a very personal question that Bob Gale asked himself one afternoon. Gale was visiting his parents and found his father's old high school yearbook. Looking through it, he discovered that his father had been the class president, and he found himself wondering,
I have been looking all over for you. You remember me? The guy who saved your life the other day? Oh.
If he had gone to high school with his father, would they have been friends? Would they have had anything in common? Would they have recognized anything in each other? That question became the engine of the entire film. Marty McFly's journey isn't really about time travel. It's about seeing your parents as human beings before they became your parents. Before the compromises, before the disappointments, before they settled into the roles you've always known them in. The time travel is the mechanism. The story is about a son discovering that his father was once a dreamer who had the same insecurities, the same fears, and the same desperate hope for something better. George McFly in 1955 is not Marty's father yet. He's just a kid. And watching Marty recognize that, watching him help his father find the courage to become someone worth believing in, is why the film has lasted 40 years and why people cry at the end of it even on the 10th viewing. Bob Gale found the whole movie in a yearbook. That's where it started. Number 13. The film was originally shot with a different DeLorean. Now, Back to the Future's most iconic prop, the stainless steel, gull-winged DeLorean time machine, was not a single vehicle during production. Multiple DeLoreans were used throughout filming, each modified for different purposes, and the cars themselves had a complicated relationship with the production from beginning to end. The DeLorean Motor Company had actually collapsed and gone out of business in 1982, 3 years before the film was released. John DeLorean himself had faced legal troubles that derailed the company entirely. When production began on Back to the Future, the filmmakers were working with a car whose manufacturer no longer existed, which gave the prop an accidental layer of real-world strangeness that matched its fictional identity perfectly. Several DeLoreans were acquired and modified for different functions. One was rigged for interior filming. One was fitted with the spinning tires and effects required for the time travel sequences. Others were used for various stunt and driving sequences throughout the film. The flux capacitor, the device that makes time travel possible, the thing that Doc Brown invented when he slipped in his bathroom and hit his head, was built as a practical prop inside the car's interior. The Y-shaped lighting effect was achieved through practical on-set effects, not post-production. What you see in the film is a physical object in a physical car, lit and filmed on a real set. The DeLorean was already something that existed outside normal reality before the filmmakers ever touched it. They just pointed a camera at it and let the car do half the work. Number 14. Lea Thompson prepared for her role by studying 1950s women's magazines. Now, one of the most underappreciated performances in Back to the Future belongs to Lea Thompson, who plays Lorraine Baines, the teenage version of Marty's mother.
Oh, pleased to meet you, Calvin.
With a warmth and specificity that makes the film's central emotional paradox actually work, Thompson was tasked with playing a character at two completely different points in her life. The Lorraine of 1955 had to feel like a real teenage girl of that era. Her speech, her references, her sense of what was romantic and scandalous and exciting shaped entirely by a world that no longer existed by 1985. And the Lorraine of 1985
Aren't you going up to the lake tonight? You've been planning it for 2 weeks.
had to feel like a recognizable version of the same person, aged and changed but continuous. To prepare for the 1955 version of Lorraine, Thompson spent significant time studying period materials, women's magazines from the 1950s, films from the era, the specific social codes around dating and propriety and ambition that shaped how young women spoke and moved and thought about themselves in that decade. The result is a performance that never draws attention to its own research. You don't watch Lea Thompson in 1955 and think about the preparation she put in. You just believe her. She inhabits the decade rather than demonstrating it, which is the harder and more valuable thing to do. It is the kind of performance that gets overlooked in discussions of the film because it functions so completely. When something works perfectly, audiences tend to take it for granted. Thompson made Lorraine Baines McFly real, and the film's emotional stakes depend on that entirely. Number 15. Back to the Future became the first VHS to sell over 1 million copies. And here's the final fact, and it might be the one that says the most about what Back to the Future meant to an entire generation. Because the story of this film's legacy isn't just about what happened in theaters in 1985. It's about what happened afterward, in living rooms and on VCRs, in the years when home video was still new and the idea of owning a movie was still something that felt slightly extraordinary.
What about all that talk about screwing up future events, the space-time continuum?
Back to the Future became the first home video release in history to sell over 1 million copies. Not rent, not broadcast, sell Over 1 million individual households bought a copy of the film and added it to a shelf where it could be watched again and again on any night without waiting for it to appear on television. That milestone captured something real about the film's relationship with its audience. Back to the Future wasn't a movie people saw once and appreciated. It was a movie people wanted to own, wanted to return to, wanted to show to younger siblings and cousins and eventually their own children. The film has now been introduced to new audiences across 4 decades. Every generation that discovers it finds something that feels contemporary. The jokes still land, the pacing still works, the emotional core still hits. Very few films from 1985 can say the same. 1 million VHS copies sold. 11 consecutive weeks at number 1. 44 studio rejections before any of it happened. Back to the Future is proof that the movies which earn lasting love are almost never the ones anyone expected. They're the ones that got made anyway, against the odds, by people who believed in them when nobody else did. And there you have it, 15 untold secrets and hidden facts about Back to the Future. Which one surprised you most? Which fact are you going to share the next time this film comes up? Let us know in the comments below. Hit like if this brought back some memories. Subscribe to Before TV and Cinema for more deep dives into the movies and shows that defined us. And share this one with someone who still quotes this film on a regular basis, because we all know at least one person who does. Until next time, where we're going, we don't need roads.